June and July and August, the problems I have mostly with my squashes are the white powdery mildew and the squash bugs. We're working daily to eradicate those, and I did a journal post on that. I put the link down in the description if you're interested in those problems. But I figured I should go ahead and do a journal entry also on the problems that I have earlier in the growing season. The two big problems are the Japanese beetle grubs and the vine borers. This journal entry is on those two problems.
In May and June, zucchini and squash and cucumbers will sometimes completely wilt. One day they'll be fine, and the next day they'll be wilted. And by the following day, they're completely flat with wilt. That's an indication that the Japanese beetle grub has eaten the roots. Because the plant's getting no moisture drawn up from the ground, it wilts. Once the plant is wilted, there's nothing that can be done because there's simply no roots left. I've lost so many plants to that problem that now when I see the plant begin to wilt, I water it and I check. If it still wilts, even when watered, then I know it's probably a root problem. I've had some success with digging the plant completely up and looking for the grubs. I don't have pictures of live grubs right now because it's an early season problem. But this is one of my success stories. This zucchini plant wilted, and when I saw it starting to wilt, I immediately dug it up. I found two large grubs that were about 2 inches long and about 1 inch wide. I of course killed those. If you don't dig down and find the grub, it'll just go to the next one in line. The roots were damaged on the plant. They had already been eaten, and that's why it had caused it to wilt. But I went ahead and planted it here next to my peppers and my carrots so that I would know it would get watered often. And I just kept watering it. It took it about 2 months to regain its leaves and to rebuild its root system, but it actually has survived quite well. And now when the other zucchinis have succumbed to the vine borer, this one has survived. So this is a success story. Early in the spring, the other pests like the vine borer and the squash bugs haven't developed yet. So if the plant is wilting, it's likely to be the Japanese beetle grub. By June, those grubs hatch, and the small ones make small Japanese beetles, sometimes called June bugs, and the larger ones are actually Japanese beetles, are a little bit larger. I'll leave a link in the description for the damage that the June bugs and the Japanese beetle did to my bean plant once they hatched. So once they hatch in June, then the grubs are no longer a problem. But the next problem that squash encounter then is the vine borer. This squash looks like it's doing pretty well. It's green, it's got new growth, it's even got a pretty good size yellow squash down here. I'm going to go ahead and pick that because this squash is actually not doing as well as it looks. Even though it's green, it has a problem, and that's the vine borer. I'm checking all of my squashes because I've lost several. In the last one I pulled out, I didn't have my camera, but I took out 5 grubs out of the center of the vine. So I'm here checking this one. Here, I planted this in a container and left the container around the squash. The squash grew up off the ground and then turned. And so far I'm testing by pressing, and there's no mushy spots anywhere on the stem. But where the stem touched the ground, I put a mirror underneath so that I could look. And you can see in the reflection there that I've got a hole. So I know that there are vine borers in this plant. I can see here holes. This sawdusty, the sawdust here indicates that something has bored in there. They're in there and they're going to move along the stem. So all along the stem are areas where the grubs have eaten through. There's still enough nutrients getting through the stem that the plant is still surviving. If I can get in there and kill the grubs, I may be able to save the plant. One of my indications that this plant probably had some issues with the vine borer is that the leaves wilted just a little bit even after watering. Watering more won't help because that will just clog the vine. You can see here this sawdust means this has been freshly bored here. I'm using a paper clip that I've extended because it's narrow enough to just go right in the center. My goal is to just poke in there. I can feel on this side of the vine there's a soft spot, and that tells me that the grubs have gotten all the way up this tall. The difficulty with turning the plant just all the way over is that if it snaps at a weak spot, then everything after that will die. It may wind up that happens as I help this plant, but I do know that if I do nothing, the whole plant will eventually die. I've cut this open here with the knife, and I got out pieces of a borer. I also trimmed this leaf right here, and this is solid and it hasn't been damaged, so that's a good sign. It means these borers were probably small, and I've gotten one or two of them out of this area. Here's another one. I've poked them with the paper clip in the hope of killing them. But they are pretty tough, so I want to see what I can do. You can see the paper clip did kill this grub. It's right on the end of my knife there, and I'm going to pull it out. It was going towards the leaf. I already knew that leaf stem on the right had died, so that makes sense that it's there. I'm working my way down the stem, and this little guy did not like being poked, so he tried to crawl out of that hole. He was already partially dead. Well, he's not quite dead, but this is what was inside that hole underneath. This is a plant where I knew that there was a borer inside, and you can see here the squash beetles in the stem, eating the stem. Destroying the plant. So this is all that's left of my stem, and this is why this plant wilts when it's hot, is because the whole plant is only being fed by half of the stem. The bottom half of the stem is gone, and these squash beetles, squash bugs, were inside the stem eating away at it. It had actually been there before, the hole had, and they took up residence there. I'm going to go ahead and leave the plant. It's still producing now that I've killed the bugs. Only time will tell whether or not that's been sufficient to keep this squash alive a little bit longer.